Erev Tov Rabotai. B'ezrat Hashem, tonight we're going to do Birkat HaLevana. B'ezrat Hashem, and we'll do this mitzvah. It's very important. The Kabel Panei HaShechina. When you do the Birkat HaLevana, you're accepting, you're receiving the Panei HaShechina, the presence of Hashem. So it's a very important mitzvah, So we have to go out there and do it. Baruch Hashem, B'ezrat Hashem. So I want to tell you a couple of things interesting. Today somebody asked me a good question, which is that I'll teach you a couple of things about Shabbat, laws of Shabbat. So the Chachamim said that there's a mitzvah to eat hot food on Shabbat, for the seudot. So a person shouldn't eat just cold food, Some people, what they like to do is, at night, they eat hot food, and then in the morning, they have only cold food, right? Right? Breakfast, bagels and cream cheese, right? Whatever, right? Yeah. So, right, lox, yeah. This is not the proper thing to do, because a person should have a hot meal also, in the morning as well. When he finishes the prayers should have a hot meal. So, in order to have a hot meal in the morning, what you have to do is, to have some way to heat it up, to keep it hot, So, there's a couple of ways to do this, and I want to tell you a couple of things about this, which I was asked several questions about this. So, the best way today to keep the food hot or to heat it up is to have a plata, that nice big thing, you put it, and you can also put it with a timer, so it doesn't have to be on 24 hours, for the whole Shabbat, because, it starts to get hot and it smells, and it's balagan, So this way, this best thing to do is to have a timer. When you're finished with your meal, it'll shut down by itself, This way you don't have to smell it all night, the hot and There's also, honestly, I have to tell you, there's a little bit of a fire hazard also, having it on 24 hours. There was, I remember a few years ago, there was one family in Brooklyn, They had a plata on Shabbat, and it started a fire, and a lot of people died in the family, lo aleinu, So what happened over there? Somebody, apparently, from what I remember, they left like a towel, on top of the plata, and it started a fire. You have to be careful, You have to be careful. Plata is a very strong thing. It can make a fire. So you got to be careful about that. That's why it's better to use it with a timer. But whatever, each person has according to his own thing. So plata is very good. There's also another way, which Ashkenazim have been doing already for many, many years. And also some of the Sfaradim, we also do it. Which is, you cover the stove with a metal plate, tas, which is called, they call that blech, in Yiddish, right? They put the blech on top of it. And this way you can also heat up the same thing as plata. Whatever you can do on the plata, you can also do on the blech. Same halacha, same thing. There's no difference. Why is that? Because on the blech, since the ash is covered, so this eliminates the concern that maybe you're going to turn it up or turn it down, because it's going to remind you, don't turn up the fire. Don't turn it down, because, it's Shabbat, so you're going to remember because your ash is covered. This is why they do it this way, So that's also a good thing. Some people like to do this way, some people like to do this way. But the truth is, today, most people are using the plata because it's better, it works better. It's a superior system, Because with the ash, you have the smell and you have all these things, there's a fire, going on all the time. And, and then how do you turn it off, if you want to have to keep it on 24 hours? It's sort of a headache, this is a blech, thing, So, okay, most people now prefer to use a plata. Okay, that's great. Fantastic, Baruch Hashem, So, what does that mean? That if you have something which is dry, like mostly dry, or all dry, dish, whatever, right? Whatever it may be, right? Whatever the Bukharians eat, the eshpolo, and all these things, right? They're mostly dry. There's also some broth in there, but it's mostly dry. Chalent is mostly dry. There is some broth in there in the chalent, but it's mostly dry. More than 50% dry, But not like soup, soup is mostly broth. So it's like, just the opposite, right? So soup you cannot put on the plata, like this, on Shabbat. You have to put it before Shabbat comes in. There's also ways to do that, but fine. Okay, so what you can do is, if your plata, is working on Shabbat, you can take something dry or mostly dry from the refrigerator, and put it on the plata and heat it up, to have it in the morning. There's no problem to do that, If it's mostly dry or all dry, that's no problem. So, great. Plata is good. You can do that. Also with the blech, the same thing, the tas. Same thing, same halacha. You can take something, cold and heat it up there. Why is it that you can do this? So let me tell you and explain to you a little bit differently, right? Also, now contrast the oven, right? What about the tanur, the oven? Are you allowed to, let's say, right, your oven is on, right, on Shabbat. Are you allowed to put something in there to heat it up on Shabbat? So here, you're not allowed to do this, it's not allowed. Asur. What's the difference between this and that? Why the plata is allowed and the blech is allowed and the tanur is not allowed? What's the difference between them? Because the problem is, tanur, we call this in halakha, michzikim vashel. You know what that means? It looks like you're cooking, because you're putting it inside there. Even though it may be already fully cooked, what you're putting in there, but it looks like you're cooking. Some people can see it that way. So because of that, the Chachamim said, don't put it over there. If the oven is hot, you can't touch it. It's too hot to touch. So you can't put something in there on Shabbat to heat it up. Asur, because michzikim vashel looks like you're cooking. No good. But the thing is, when you put it on top of the plata, right, it's allowed. Also, when you put it on top of the blech, it's allowed. Why? What's the difference between this and that? You understand my question? The difference is that it's not the way to cook, with the plata. You don't cook with the plata. You warm it with the plata. If you want to cook, you put it on the fire. You heat it up, right? Whatever kind of stove you have. But who cooks on a plata? What, you put on the plata to cook something? You don't do that, right? You heat it up on the plata. And then you continue cooking on the plata. That you can do. Continue. But you start with the esh first, with the fire. Then you continue with the plata. So plata doesn't look like you're cooking, when you put something on there. So therefore, this is the reason why it's not the same as the tanur. So tanur is asur to heat up in there on Shabbat. The plata is mutar. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Rabbi, some of the tanurs, there's a switch that's written in the Shabbat.
Right, Shabbat setting. Right, Shabbat setting. Right, yes, I know. I've seen this. They have it in Israel. This kind of thing. But here's the thing, right? You can, put the Shabbat setting, right? Some goy, in France, who making the oven, some French guy, what I mean? Macron, over there, right? He's doing this kind of thing. But, it doesn't mean that's halakha just because it says this. But I have to tell you, right, that if the oven is too hot to touch, right, doesn't matter what it says there, Shabbat, Shmabat, doesn't matter. If it's too hot to touch it, if it's
low.
Right. If it's very low,
It's like 200 degrees.
right. I guess if it's very low, and it's not too hot to touch, so then you can put it. Yes, it's true. It's true. If you have a setting like that, but it has to be very low. So you cannot cook it there. It's not possible to cook it. Yeah, very good, Baruch Hashem. Here you have it. Here you have it. Okay, very good, Baruch Hashem. Yeah. So if you put it very, very low, yes, it's possible. But the truth is, right, most of the time the oven is too hot, because it can make it yatzoledbo. It can cook, So if it can cook something, it's too hot to put it in there. That's the thing, So you got to watch out with that. So tanur, it's not the same thing. But, something interesting, right, happened. Somebody just asked me, a friend of mine, which is that they put, the inside in the oven erev Shabbat on Friday. They put challah in there, to make challah. And what happened was that Shabbat already came in, and the challah was still in there. So the question now is, right? Are you allowed to remove the challah? Or so there was one person there who was there at the place. They told them, no, you cannot remove it, until the oven shuts down, whatever. But the truth is, there's no prohibition like this. You can remove it if it's already ready. It's already 100%, baked. The challah right inside there. There's no prohibition to open the oven and to remove the challah. There's no such a thing like this. So you can do that. It's not really a problem. It's already made. It got cooked a little bit on Shabbat also, but you put it in before. But you know what I mean? So it's fine.
If you open the door, let's say there is no Shabbat more, you open the door, light's going to be on.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's something else. I'm not talking about that, right? I'm talking about a regular oven, regular, right? Lights. Yeah, no lights, what I mean? Yeah, I see what you're saying, I got you. That's a different discussion, I'm just talking about a regular oven, with no lights, regular, right? You open it and you take it out and that's it, right? Finish, gamano. Right? So there's no problem, to remove something because it was already fully cooked. You know what I mean? And you're not putting something new in there. So just removing it. And also same thing, if you have like a dish in there, let's say you made some food, inside the oven, right? And it was cooking, and it got ready, and it's now Shabbat already. So you can take it out, to eat it. No problem. There's no problem. You don't have to wait till the oven turns off. No such a thing like that. No such a prohibition like that. Right? So yeah, okay, we have to understand, right? There are certain things which are allowed, certain things. Another thing is one of my friends asked me, last week, same thing, which is that he asked me, I have, something which is like partially cooked, and I want to leave it, to be cooked more on Shabbat, so can I leave it there? It's going to be ready on Shabbat. Is there a problem with that, to leave it there like that? So I told him, I said, the best thing to do, if you have a situation like that, they're going to eat it tonight, not tomorrow morning, right? Tonight they're going to eat it. You know what I mean? Tomorrow morning is a different halakha. But tonight, if he's going to eat it tonight, what I told him was, are you using a plata or a blech? So he says, yes, I'm using a blech, So if you're using a blech, there's no problem, because it doesn't look like, something, we're not concerned you're going to turn it up or turn it down, because the blech is reminding you not to play with the fire, Don't play with fire, as they say, right? Don't play with that, right, on Shabbat. So therefore, right, there's no problem. So you can, that's that also. There's no problem to do that, So we have to know, right, certain things which are allowed, certain things which are not allowed. These halachot, a person has to learn them. But the point is, that you want to have hot food on Shabbat. So you should try. As I said, right, that let's say you have a soup now, right? The soup is mostly liquid. You know what I mean? So there, as we said, you cannot put the soup on Shabbat on a plata to heat it up, like take it out of the fridge, and put it on the plata to heat it up. Why? Because it's mostly liquid. So what difference does it make if it's mostly liquid or not? Who cares? What difference does it make? So, there's a concept like this in halakha. I'll teach you a couple of things, right? So it says, mistamek ve'yafelo, mistamek ve'ralo. What does that mean? The question is, when it's drying out the food, right? And the liquid is evaporating, is that good for the food or it's bad? So if it's mostly solid, it's a little bit liquid in there, it's bad, because it's getting dried out. So therefore, you're allowed to. No problem, right? In a case like that, you're allowed to heat it up. That's why I told you, right? Cholent, eshpalo, you can put. You know what I mean? Something like that. No problem. Right? But when you have something which is mostly liquid, it's mistamek ve'afelo, right? It's getting dried out and it's getting better, like the taste is improving like that. You understand? So there, we don't allow that. That's already asur. You know why? Because yesh bishul acharei bishul belach. What does that mean? You can cook, right? You can cook twice when it comes to something, a soup like that, which is mostly broth. Yesh bishul achar bishul. You can cook once and cook again, like this, right? When it comes to dry, no such thing like that. When it comes to moist, right, something, liquid, yes, there is such a thing. So therefore, a soup you cannot put on the plata. So then what do, right? You want to heat up the soup, right? There's a way to do it. There's a solution for everything, Come to the rabbis, they'll tell you what to do, no problem, right? That's what the rabbis are for, So what do? You have a cold soup in the fridge, right? You want to heat it up. So the best thing to do is like this, as I said, right? Put the plata on a timer, you know what I mean? And when the plata is off, put the soup then, and then the plata will turn on by itself and heat up the soup. This is allowed. Why? Why is it allowed to do it this way? What's the reason why? We call this grama, right? Indirect causation, because you're not doing it directly, right? First you're putting it, it's cold, and then later on it'll turn on by itself, grama, right? So grama is mutar, melacha asura, grama mutar, right? And even though there are some people, by the way, who want to say that, grama is also asur, b'derabanan, right, from the rabbis. Only the Ashkenazim are machmir about this, about grama. But we Sfaradim, we're not machmir. So therefore, right, something which is indirect, you're allowed to do. This is indirect causation. So therefore, that's what you do, right? Put it on when it's cold, right? It's off, and then it'll turn on in another half hour, whatever. It'll heat it up, and everything is good. Baruch Hashem, right? Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen, amen. רבי חנניה בן אומר, עצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל, לפיכך חיבר להם תורה ומצוות של מנו חפץ, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר.